Okay, if you haven't by now, you should have built a stand for your mask. And this is the one that I got. I just got a few leftover pieces of cardboard that I had, and it actually worked really well. So that's my stand. By now you should know enough to be able to build one. So if you haven't done that already, that's the very first thing you should do, because some of you, your animal is going to be a giraffe or a zebra or whatever, and it has a long snout or a long neck, or if it's an elephant, it has a long nose. So you need a stand. The stand should hold your mask comfortably, like that, and I'm pretty confident with that. That's going to allow me to work on it from any direction, from the front, from the side, from the back if I need to. So I'm pretty happy with that stand. I'm pretty confident with that. So build your stand. Do it right now if you haven't already. Once your stand is built, it's time to do a little bit of research. I've already asked you guys to start looking this up. I've asked you a long time ago. Remember that I'm doing a lion, not because I want to, but because it's probably the most popular animal. And just like when we did with the Koopa Troopa, we have to look for side views, look for front views. So right now, I'm just putting together my side views. Save whichever you think is going to work for you. And it doesn't have to be completely realistic like this either. Let me show you what I mean. I think ultimately I decided to use this. So you see, this isn't really realistic, and you're going to have to alter it, because you're going to have to be able to see out of the eyes, and you're going to have to try to match it up in such a way that, you know, you can still see. So you're going to have to alter it. Your face is not like a lion's face. Your face is not like an elephant's face. So it's not going to be 100% natural looking, but that doesn't matter. Ultimately, we're just trying to learn the techniques, and I think we'll succeed in doing that. So I'm going to use this one, but first I'm going to make it into a female lion or a juvenile male lion with no mane. That way, if any of you want to do a female lion, you can. And at the end of everything, I'll add the hair by threading or twisting paper and adding the hair that way. All right on to the next step. Okay, remember that I told you guys that you were going to have to hold on to that specific piece so you can kind of create an outline out of it. So I'm talking about this piece, all right? If you don't have that piece, then hopefully you have the other one that looks like this. It's really helpful if you have one of these two pieces. If you don't, it's going to be really hard to try to get something that matches up perfectly. Once you have one of these pieces, you're going to want to outline it. You outline it here, and that's going to tell you exactly where you're going to start the silhouette of your animal. Okay? So you remember that I'm doing that one with the shadow that I just showed you. It's got the mouth a little bit open. Of course, I had to change it up a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do now. So the next step for me is I'm actually going to cut this out, and do notice that I didn't add the ears. Okay. The ears exist on another plane. Imagine that this is the center of the head. So the ears are going to be added on later. Same thing with the teeth. The teeth are not going to be in the middle of the face. So later I'm going to have to cut these out, duplicate it, so you have a canine on each end, put one closer to this side and closer to this side, depending on what I add. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out, and then I'm going to glue it on to my frame. And I'm going to be right back with that cutout. So I've cut out the face of my silhouetted lion, and I am going to now glue that. And if you notice from the previous one, I changed it up a bit. So I made it thinner here, right around where the eyes would be, and I skipped out on the top. Since I made that thinner, I had to compensate, and I just cut it to here. But this is going to line up really well with the back of the head. I'll show you that now. So you can see how well it's going to line up with the back of the head, and I think that'll work really well. Now another thing that you have to keep in mind is that this might end up being pretty flimsy, and that's okay, because we're going to glue it onto our frame, and it should get some strength there, and then we're going to add more supports to it. Even if this were to not be completely intact, you could still glue it on, and in theory it would work perfectly well. So keep that in mind. If it's becoming too tedious to cut it out in one piece, you can cut it out in different pieces, and as long as it fits, you should be okay. Next thing I'm going to do off camera is I am going to glue that on. So I'm going to glue that piece onto the support that we've built. Okay, now I'm gluing it on, and immediately I was able to tell that this isn't going to fit perfectly. So I am actually going to end up cutting it, but the nose fit pretty well. So I'm going to break this off right here. Let me just see if I can do that on camera. And I'm going to put this piece on here now. And that's fine. So later on we'll make whatever adjustments need to be made to make this work. Of course it's going to be a little bit longer, but since we don't cut out things perfectly, that's fine. It should still all work out in the end. So if you find yourself having the same problem, don't freak out. You're going to make it work, right? All right, here you can see that I've added it on. It's not perfect, right? But it doesn't have to be. So what we can do is we can either cut that piece, or you can fill it in later, tape over it, or whatever. I'm not going to do anything to it right now, but if you wanted to cut it, if you have something similar, you can cut it. But those of you that are a bit more artistic and can imagine the result, you can see I think we're going to get a good result here. It is very important to try and keep this as symmetrical as possible. It's going to be one of the biggest challenges here. You can see that the snout, whatever it is, already kind of swerving to the left. It's going to be a challenge to keep it, symmetrical. That's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges we have here. Now the next step is actually applying the side pieces. The width is already determined for us because it's based on the width of your own head. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding the side pieces of the snout here. And then do remember that these teeth, we're going to have to cut those out because they're not in the middle of the head. And then we're going to have to duplicate them to get two on each side. And you need to do more research. I need to do some more research to make sure that I see how many teeth there are and where they're positioned exactly. So I need to create a drawing here, and I'll show you what I'm going to draw to put it there. And probably I'm going to have to create some ascending ones too. I may have to put in some extra bars here for support, but we'll see how it turns out. Alright, the next step, which is to do the front view. It takes a lot of conceptualizing. Alright, now I've added an extra challenge here because I am doing the mouth open. If you're doing the mouth closed, it's going to be a bit different for you. But imagine that this is the front view. And by the way, this requires research. Let me show you what I have for it. For the front view, I found this. Okay. Obviously there's more, but I think this will work for me. And I'm going to use that to try to, guide me to get what I need. So imagine that this is the front with the nose being here. Right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to create the mouth. That's the first thing I'm going to do. How am I going to do that? I'm going to create a U-shaped cardboard cutout. Actually, I'm going to create two of those. One for the top, one for the bottom. The bottom is going to be smaller than the top. Now, this is just planning and conceptualizing, which is what most of art is all about. And if I wanted, I could make these a little bit longer, bend them, and glue these two together. Right, I'm going to do that to give you an idea of what this is going to look like. But on the actual sculpture, you're going to have to try to see how wide this has to be. All right, and that's going to determine the shape of the U, and that's going to give us something to work with here, which we're then going to build up. From that U, we're going to start building the muzzle, and then we'll discuss the other areas as we need to. But let's take a look at your reference image, and based on the reference image, this has to be really quite wide. So I'm looking at something more or less like that. So there's a very large mouth. And remember, all of this is a guide. Everything we're doing here is a guide. Without this, I wouldn't be able to get to the next step. But if we have to change this, we will. There's nothing that is set in stone. There's nothing that we can't change. When it comes down to the final piece, even then, we could still cut things off and add things if we think it's necessary. So the next step is to create these U things with the extension, so I can add that in for the mouth. Oh, I am gonna cut off this tooth, both of these. So I am gonna do that right now. All right. If you don't have an open mouth, then things are a little bit different. If you're doing a lion, for the center here, coming off the nose, which is already done, what I would do is, I wouldn't do a U per se, but I would do two pieces coming out like that. I don't know if you can see that. So let's say you have where the nose would be, and this comes straight down. What I would do is I would attach a piece of cardboard here, and I would attach a piece of cardboard here, and then I could bend a piece here, and I could also bend a piece rather nicely here if you don't want to do an open mouth. And that is more or less the shape of a lion who doesn't have an open mouth. And you could see that right there. Of course, that being said, again, this is just a guide. Then you would have to round this out forward, maybe a little bit. You'd have to round this out by adding your grid there, and then you'd have to add the grid this way, and then you stuff that, and that would create your muzzle. If you're doing any animal that's not a lion, depends what it is. I don't think anybody's doing a zebra, but a lot of you are doing cheetahs and jaguars or leopards. So those are very similar to the lion. They're cats. If you're doing an elephant, then you would have to do something very cylindrical, coming towards the trunk, forming the trunk, and then you'd have to grid that appropriately, stuff that, you know. So you'd have to work with this type of thinking and organizing until it does what you need it to do. The same thing, if any of you do want to do a buffalo or a zebra or a giraffe, I know some of you want to do a giraffe, it's also kind of this very cylindrical type of process. That's the way that I would approach it. Of course, it's not the only way. And then as I get towards the nostrils, maybe I would expand it a little bit. So if I was doing that type of animal, I would work with that cylindrical type of thinking, and then expand this here, still being very, you know, cylindrical, and then of course leave space for your nostrils. Of course, you'd have to round that off here, and then you grid that and you stuff that. Sometimes they have a little pointy thing there, but that's how I would approach that, kind of this cylindrical type of organization. So I'm going to create that shape for the mouth. I'll draw it out first, understanding that it has to be very wide, and then I'll be back and you'll see how it comes along. So I've drawn what I'm going to use for the top jaw. Now I'm just going to go over this, and that's transparent, as you can see. I don't want the bottom jaw to be too much smaller, because remember, ultimately these do kind of combine, but it should be smaller. And if you can see my drawing, I left like a little dip here for the nose. So again, I'm just going to put this over. Let me put it over like this, and just very close to it, I'm going to start drawing what I feel like I need for the bottom jaw. Eventually they should kind of connect, so right here at the bottom you do want it to connect with the one below it. And this is experimental. Like I told you guys in the beginning of class of the year, I'm experimenting a lot here. These are things that come into my mind, and I think that they'll work out that way, but it doesn't always work out. But the good thing is you can always adjust it if it doesn't. And I'm going to use this for the bottom jaw. And I'm making this extra long so I could stick it to something else, or I could bend it if I need to, but it's better for it to be long now, and we'll cut it later if we need to. You can always cut it. It's more difficult to add on if you have to. So there you go. I think that's very wide, and it's going to be impressive when I put it on. I'm going to cut that out in cardboard, and then I'm going to attach it. Alright, here are the two pieces that I talked about. I actually wrote that this is the bottom, and I wrote that this is the top so I wouldn't be confused. For those of you that aren't sure what's going to happen now, let me explain to you. These are going to get placed like this, and I'm going to have to see how much I actually have to bend them, but I am going to bend them, and that is going to make my top jaw and my bottom jaw. Of course, I'm going to bend it more than this so it's a bit smoother and round, but that can give you an idea more or less of where I'm going with this if you were having a hard time imagining before. Now, once I do that, I'm going to glue it on, and that's going to give me one extra, element that I need to complete this. So I am going to round that off, and I'm going to put it on. This is how I'm going to round it up if you're not sure. So it's not like a corner there. You want to round that up like that. Now, again, I also don't know how deep, right, or how much I need to go here, but I do know that I kind of want it to be that wide, so it ends up being like that, and I think that's pretty good. And if we have to cut it and glue it, then we could do that. Yeah, I actually like it a little bit longer so I could glue it right onto this piece, and then we'll go from there. As far as the bottom, it's not really a problem whether they connect or not, because we can always add a piece later. But the most important thing is to try to get the sides here so we can start building this up. In order to make sure, I'm going to cut it, but in order to make sure that it's symmetrical, I folded it in half. And now I'm going to cut it so when I glue it on over there, it's just a bit more symmetrical. And if you want this to be really symmetrical, which it should be, to be honest with you, and if I had a do-over here, I would just do one piece and then trace that same piece over and use it for the other end. It's never perfect because we're not perfect, but it'll give you a good result, a much better result. All right, now it's time to glue this on, and I am gonna glue it on right here, kind of close to the bottom. I took the teeth off, and we may be able to use these same ones later, or we could just redo them. But right now, my priority is going to be to glue on this side piece, which is very important for the continued success of this project. And I'm just gonna put that piece right there. I'm not gonna glue this on yet because I'm not quite sure where I want it to go. That's kind of giving me a hard time here. And again, make sure that you're using the right piece. See, I'm not sure if this is the right piece, but I did write on them, that's why I did. Yeah, so this is the right piece because this is the bottom. This one is the bottom. Yeah. And I'm going to glue. And now I'm gonna just put that piece right there at the bottom. Sorry, I just wanted to show you where I was gonna glue it, but you guys already know how to glue and how long that takes. Now, you need to ask yourself how wide we want to make that. That is important. And for that, I think it's important to look at the reference. Found this great reference with more or less of a top view, and it's very wide here. So when it comes to our own, I'm gonna make sure that this is very wide, almost as wide as I can get it. And if I feel like I need to change it later, I'll change it later. But for right now, I'm gonna stick with kind of the very wide approach here. Not completely, but very close to completely. And I'm gonna make that wide. And let me actually glue that on right now. Right here. And it is important to try to remain as symmetrical as possible. You know, so just take a good look at it and do your best. You know, I'm sure you'll be fine. Before you actually finish gluing it down, take a look at it, make sure it's symmetrical as you can get it. And I think that is great. That's a great solution to how wide this is going to be. As you guys start working on this, you'll see that your cardboard is going to start to bend here and there. Probably it already has because it's been so long, it loses its strength, but that's not important. It's just meant to be used as a support anyways, and we could always change it or fix it. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom jaw now. And I may not even add the connecting piece in between yet, because I feel like this is maybe wider than the actual mouth, so the mouth will be somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom now. And I'm going to do that off camera, you don't need to see that twice. Alright, so the bottom jaw, I decided to take it in a different direction. And I am going to curve it, and I'm just going to try to follow this curve. But if you understand the anatomy of a lion, so just try to understand as much as possible that this is not where the teeth are going to be. Imagine that this is the cheek that goes over the teeth. So the teeth are actually going to fall in line a little bit closer. So I'm not going to put this all the way across the edge. I'm going to put it a bit more like this, right? And that's where the top teeth should be. And then of course this leftover space here, that's the cheek. So try to understand that. And I'm going to do that with both sides now. And I did bend this a lot. See, I haven't quite done it to this side, but you guys should already know how to bend cardboard. And you just want to make sure that it's round, you know, it's well bent and it's round. And yeah, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Again, trying to keep it as symmetrical as possible. Okay, so now we've given ourselves a nice space for the mouth and to add the teeth. And remember that this is going to be a cheek coming over. I know it's a bit hard to kind of conceptualize it right now. I think right now it is safe to cut off this little extra piece, and I will do that. But remember that cardboard will lose its strength over time, so I am going to reinforce this piece by either putting a piece directly across right here so it connects to the mouth, and maybe one right here, and that'll hopefully keep it in its place a little bit longer and stop it from slouching or whatever, until we can build this up enough till we can add the, you know, the tissue or whatever, the paper that we're going to add to give it its real strength. All right. At this stage it's a bit jumbled, but I did exactly what I said I would do, and I added the reinforcements here to the back of the mouth, and I added one more right here below. So that's gonna hopefully hold this in place long enough to get the stuffing in and to get it done. Alright, the next step would just be to start building it up even more, maybe around the chin and around the snout, and start considering where that nose is actually going to be. Okay, after thinking it over, I think that all I'm going to do before I start adding the gridding or the strips of paper is I want to make sure I have enough space here for my jaw. So if you can imagine that this here is my human jaw, the bottom of the mouth is going to be here, and I'm going to just add a little bit here on both sides to make sure that I have a nice thick jaw. I'm really happy with this so far. So in essence, what you guys want to do for the first step here is you want to add the muzzle, right? You want to add the front of the face. Whatever animal you're doing, you can add these things. I think I had spoken about a circular technique for the zebras and things like that, or a giraffe, but you can do this as well. This is a great one. And then you start adding the bridges here. I think I could just add that with the paper. I don't think I have to do that with cardboard. It would be stronger with cardboard though, but easier to cut with the paper. And after you add the muzzle, then you can add your jaw. Make sure that your jaw is thick enough based on your references. And last but not least, we're gonna have to apply gridding all to the inside of this. We probably should have done this first, but I'm learning with you. So all to the inside, we're gonna apply gridding here. But all I'm gonna do for this video, or the end of this video, is I'm just gonna add the jaw. After that, probably the first thing I'll do is I'll add the gridding, and I'll talk more about that in that video. So this video is almost over. I'm gonna go ahead and add that extra piece for the jaw off camera, and I'll be right back. So I've cut out this piece for the jaw, and I'm just gonna put that right there. And I think that that's gonna line up nicely with the bottom of the chin, which is right over here. And I'm gonna do that on both sides. If you're doing a giraffe or a zebra, like a horse-like animal, that jaw needs to be very prominent. So this piece for you should be a bit bigger. If you're doing something like an elephant, and it should be maybe a little bit smaller but higher up, I'm not sure, you have to look at your reference. Alright guys, this is it for this video. For the next video we're going to start with the gridding, and I think this is gonna be good. See you in class.